If you're not making content that is about the customer, then you're making the wrong content. But how do you find out what your customers want? Where do you start? What is that process like? And how can AI be used as a tool to enhance your content creation? Today in our lesson, we answer all those questions and we look at proven methods as we seek to make you a better equipped business owner when it comes to creating customer-centric content. Here we go. Teaching you to make useful content so that you can build long-term relationships with the people that matter to your business. Hello and welcome to the Useful Content Podcast. And today we have a new teacher in the Useful Content classroom, Mclean Lewis. Hi, Christine.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here.
The last time we were on a podcast together, you were just Christine McLean. So things have changed slightly.
Things have changed.
Great.
I don't have a ring on it.
That's good. Ring on it is good. Yeah. And it's so great to have you back. I recently was on a live stream with one of the people who I like to live stream with, and I mentioned you, but not by name. And I said that you are one of my favorite content creators on LinkedIn. And I follow a lot of people with hundreds of thousands of followers. But even though I do that, I think that you are still heavily underrated in terms of the value you provide. So it's good to have you back on the show.
Thank you so much. And I really appreciate you saying that. I'm humbled.
Excellent. All right. So let's share with the people how you help your clients make useful content and what you do for them.
All right. So I help my clients make useful content by focusing on the customer first. And I know that seems like something that's very obvious, but when I speak about focusing on the customer first, I really build content strategies and content based on an understanding of who the target customer is, what their problems are, and how the content can help them address those issues. So I focus on customer research a lot. I speak to actual stakeholders in whatever industry you're in and get feedback from them about the challenges within the industry, speak with their existing customers. I look at reviews. I do as much as possible to understand your customer and figure out how content can help them achieve their goals. So that's how I create useful content for my clients.
It's interesting because you are a content strategist and you believe in customer first content. So
Yes.
how would you define, I know you just talked about it a little bit, but how would you define customer first content?
All right. So customer first content is any type of content that you create, whether it's a blog post, a YouTube video, a podcast episode, whatever the content medium is, that content is based on empowering your customers to become their best selves, to achieve their goals. And in doing that, you're not necessarily pushing and promoting your product first of all, but you're paying attention to the needs of your customers first and foremost and helping them to achieve what they would like to achieve.
In the work that you've done with your clients, have you seen cases where people are just not interested in what the customers have to say or what they think?
I've found that clients sometimes have this perception that they know all. So like they have their internal conversations and they figure that, okay, this is the best thing to do because this makes sense. And, based on our thoughts or our ideas, we think that this might work and we think that this is the best thing to do without actually speaking to people within the target audience. So I found that there are clients who are like that, who go based off of their assumptions and their own gut instincts about certain things rather than speaking to the customer first to find out what the customer really wants.
Right. And in your experience, what are some of the bad outcomes that can happen when somebody ignores the customer totally?
So when someone ignores the customer totally, I'm sure that you can have an idea of what would happen. When you ignore the customer totally, you end up not having the right messaging for that target audience. So you're not attracting the type of people who you want to be as part of your community, as part of your targeting to your particular customer. So you end up attracting the wrong people. One, you're not speaking their voice and their language, so you become unrelatable to your target audience. And it just comes across as you just wanting to sell without having any value being brought to the customer.
So it's highly likely that if someone ignores the customer, that over the long term, that their strategy will fail.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Highly likely.
Could you share in a little more detail some of the ways that you make your content customer centric? Just an overview of how that works for you.
All right. So when I'm developing a content strategy, the first place I start is with customer research. And what that customer research entails is speaking to the company's existing customers, their best customers, their former customers, as many customers as I can get my hands on. I speak to them. And from those interviews, it helps me to understand the customer journey, like what brought them to the company, what challenges they were facing that led them to the solution, and essentially what they were looking for that brought them to where they were or where they are now. So using that information, I'm able to then figure out, okay, so these are the challenges that the customers were facing. How can we create content that addresses these challenges so that customers like them can find our brand and experience our content and become paying customers eventually, right? I also listen to sales calls because sales calls can be very insightful, and I try to be a part of some of them too if I can, like as a fly on the wall. Sales calls are very, very insightful, so I really do recommend people be a part of them and listen to them. And I also, if there are any existing reviews that the company has, I will look at the reviews as well, and I'll look at competitors' reviews too, just to get a holistic view of what customers are looking for, what challenges they face. And with all of that information, as I was saying, I will then figure out, okay, what content can we create to address these points, address these challenges? And the content discussion also has to focus on the content mediums as well. So what types of content would work best for appealing to this particular customer group? Where should the content be distributed? Where do these people engage with content the most? I have to look at all of those things. Then once I've done that, the aim then is to ensure that the strategy is linked to, yes, the challenges that the customers face, but also the goals that the business wants to accomplish in the short term and the long term. So for example, let's say that the business needs to generate 60 leads within a month. How can the content that we create help them generate those 60 leads? And some of the things that we can do to address that need is to create content specifically for the sales team, for example. We can create guides and email sequences that the sales team can use to nurture the existing prospects they have in their pipeline. That's one way that we can create content that specifically addresses that goal. Another thing that we can do is really reframe the brand's positioning on social media to speak to that particular customer. So like, for example, with the company that I work with now, one of the things that I did when I started was to first get case studies from customers, because they didn't have any case studies at all. So I got case studies from customers to really give that social proof to show that, okay, this company knows what it's doing and is able to achieve these results for customers. And I posted the case studies on the website, but I also repurposed them for social media, so you get value out of them. Then I started to create podcast episodes for them and video podcast episodes at that, because video podcasts on YouTube have far greater reach than audio only podcasts because of, YouTube's robust search engine and stuff like that. So I created video podcasts for them. And through the video podcasts, again, we're not forgetting the challenges that the customers have expressed that they're facing. So with the podcasts, I'm addressing those challenges that customers have highlighted, but I'm also connecting the brand with experts in the industry who fits their target audience as well. So through making those connections, it's a way of building trust within the industry and also helping the company eventually get leads. They're getting them closer to those 60 leads that they need for the month, right? And then in creating those video podcast episodes, I'm able to repurpose that content even more, because videos can be repurposed into snippets. They can be repurposed into image posts. They can be repurposed into text posts. They can be repurposed into LinkedIn articles, into blog posts. There's so much that you can do with the content. And in repurposing it and putting it out there on the various social media platforms where these people engage, it creates a different look and feel for the brand, because the brand is now being positioned as something that has a solution for the audience that they're trying to attract. So creating that positioning for the brand helps them not only to get closer to those 60 leads for the month, but helps them in the long term to attract the customers that they're looking for. That's one of the ways that I create the customer-centric content. And I know that SEO is a big thing. Search engine optimization is important, because it's important to do SEO right so that your content can be seen in search engines. It's very important. But through starting with the customer research first and then linking that research to the keywords that you want to target, even with the customer research, you're able to find the actual terms that those people use in their industry and use those terms for your keyword research. So it's more targeted. That's one thing. And even if you're not able to do that, it helps you to better understand what keyword groups you should use, what keyword phrases are most important to this group. And then you can build your content with the right keywords so that you're ranking for the right things. And your SEO becomes very targeted to the type of people you want to attract. It's not just general and broad brush and attracting every Jack and Jill out there. It's really speaking to who your customers are and what they're trying to accomplish. And I will say as well that with creating content for customers, we talk a lot about search intent in the content marketing world. So you want to ensure that you're creating content that speaks to each level of search intent. So awareness content, consideration content, and then content that leads closer to a purchase. You need to have those types of content within your content strategy as well.
All right, great. So we've spoken a little bit about that. And today we want to connect that whole customer-centric focus to how you use that in an AI-powered world. And we know artificial intelligence is all of the rage right now. And especially since now they are even creating videos from text prompts now, which I have recently looked at, and they're getting better. It's interesting. As a video creator, I'm like, I'm looking at it, as we say in the Caribbean, cut eye. I am looking at it and saying, this thing is developing fast. Right. And I know that you believe that that content that delves deep into the problems your customers face in helpful ways is the type of content that will bring long-lasting results. So your position is that even with the advent of AI, even with those things that exist, that the only way you can give your customer long-term results is by delving into their needs. Expand on that and tell us why you believe that.
All right. So I believe that AI is amazing. As you just mentioned, there are so many AI tools out there now that can help people create content and that can really support the content marketing process. And I just want to highlight that point, that even though AI is awesome and it can do all of these great things, I believe that AI is more of a support than the end all and be all of content creation. And why I believe that is because, one, AI is basically a tool that pulls in information from multiple sources and creates something, right? So it's not based on, although you can, like with some of the image generating tools, for instance, you can create something completely new and exciting using the different prompts, but at the same time, it's all based on information that it's picking up from what already exists. So it's not completely original and completely new. That's one. Two, with ChatGPT and all of these tools that people are using to actually write blog posts and those types of content, there's a lot of sameness. So a lot of the content ends up looking the same and sounding the same. And you can tell when something is written by an AI tool because it just sounds very generic and very, it doesn't have the depth that it needs to have in order to be useful, right? And even with the blog posts that are created using AI, a lot of the times they pull data from sources that are inaccurate. I wouldn't even say a lot of the time, but there are times when it pulls data from sources that aren't accurate. So you'll produce something that is not accurate and will give you a bad reputation, and that's not something that you want, right? So I believe that AI is a good supporting mechanism. It's something that you can use to give you a foundation for creating your content, a foundation that helps you to do things faster with your content marketing process. And once you have that foundation, you need to put your thoughts and your creativity and your input as a human to develop and enhance that content to really appeal to the needs of your target audience, to really appeal to what makes your brand stand out in your industry. So for example, I use ChatGPT at times to create blog post outlines and to give title ideas. So some of the prompts that I would put in would relate to the pain that I know my customer is feeling and the keyword that I want to target, and then asking ChatGPT to give me a basic outline of an article that I can create based on that pain and that keyword. And then from that outline now, I will then develop the content that I want to highlight in each heading, for instance. The content that I would want to speak to an expert about in order to get their expert opinions to enhance the article, for instance. So again, it's about using AI as the foundation or the fundamental pillar for your content strategy, using it as that, and then building from there, adding your creativity, adding your human insights.
And that's great. That's a really great overview of how to approach it. And it was Blair Enns. Blair Enns is a creator I follow. He wrote the Win Without Pitching Manifesto. Pretty good book.
Okay.
And so he has a podcast, and on the podcast he was talking about AI as well. And he was basically saying that in order for you to develop any point of view, one of the things he believes you have to do is write. You have to write for yourself. You have to put things down on paper. He mentioned that when he writes, in his mind, he is saying, I am saying something that these large language models can never say. So the AI is motivating him to do the opposite of what they are doing. And I kind of agree with that. And I think that's probably what you're saying. You're saying that it's a tool, but there's a human element of originality, of experience, of being able to talk about things in a way that is not an aggregation of all this information, but is a unique perspective. Right. And you are saying that in order for us to get the best out of our content, we need that human element. And we could also use the AI as a tool. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's essentially what I'm saying. And an example came to mind while you were speaking. I know that a lot of people have been seeing the new LinkedIn I don't know what they call it, the LinkedIn
Collaborative
thoughts,
articles.
leadership, right? Collaborative articles, right? So LinkedIn, it's a genius idea. They've been using AI to generate these articles. But when you look at these articles, they're very, very basic, very bland. They don't have any form of richness in them, any form of deep value. But what they're doing is they're getting experts on LinkedIn to come in and add their expertise to the articles. And it shows that even though AI can generate this content, you still need that human element to bring, as you were saying, the expertise, the knowledge, the creativity, the things that the AI tool can't do on its own.
Yeah, that's so true. And as somebody who has contributed to these articles, I have discovered that I was excited to contribute to like one or two, and after I read two or three of them, I'm like, this is a little strange. You know, it doesn't seem like anybody human wrote this. And you could tell after a while, as you said, you could kind of pick up. And I know this is the worst AI is going to be. It's going to get better, but at the same time, it's not going to have my story, my values, my expertise that it can pull out of in order to create that content. So that's great.
Exactly.
That's great. That's wonderful. All right, so let's talk a bit more now about how we can use these things in order to create good content. So how we can use the data we gather from interfacing with customers in order to create content. And I know you talk a bit about how Google's latest algorithm, what is it called? Is it called the
Helpful update?
Right, the helpful content.
Helpful content update.
Content update. And they have done some stuff to their algorithm that actually identifies what is AI generated and what is not. Could you explain what that is, what that update is?
All right. So the Google helpful content update basically is Google's way of ensuring that the content that is produced in the search engine is actually of value to customers. I keep going back to that word value. So they want to be able to distinguish between AI content and human-made content and the value of the human-made content that is produced. And the helpful content update is based a lot on the EEAT framework. Don't know if you've ever heard about it, but Google uses this framework to assess pages on the web. And what EEAT stands for is experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. So it's going to look at whether your content is actually being created by someone who has authority in the space to speak about it, whether the content that is on the page is actually including expert insights, is actually based on a brand's unique perspective, those types of things. It's going to look at those things and use that as part of the criteria for ranking your posts. So with the helpful content update, Google is really trying to ensure that what people are creating is really helpful content and not just something that's pushed out by artificial intelligence tools.
Could you repeat the acronym again? I think I may have heard it before, but say it's for the people so that they can hear it.
Sure. It's EEAT. So EAT with an extra E at the beginning.
Right. And it stands for?
Experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness.
Right. So it's interesting. So Google wants us to create content that falls under the category of these things. And so it is essentially saying, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's essentially saying that the opposite of that is AI content, created content. And so if we want to be recognized by them, then we have to do it this way. So then how can someone then create content that is under that EEAT? I'm not sure the acronym.
EEAT.
Okay, how can someone create content like that?
Sure. Before I even answer that, I know that there's a little bit of controversy surrounding the EEAT framework still, though, because I saw a post the other day by somebody on LinkedIn who was saying that the EEAT framework, even though it exists, Google is still rewarding websites that are using keywords strategically and are very keyword heavy. So people who are creating like these thought leadership pieces that don't really focus so much on the keywords, they're still not getting the visibility that they'd like to see in the search engines. So there's that debate around whether the EEAT is really doing what it's supposed to do to get the content that should get the visibility that it needs out there. But with that said, despite that controversy, with the EEAT framework, let me just run through what each of those things means so that I can then explain how you create that type of content. So with E, the first E is experience. And with experience, what Google is looking for here is first-hand or life experience on the topic. So if you're able to share your stories and share, for instance, how your brand was able to achieve a particular outcome for a client, like through a case study, I guess, you can include that information in the content that you create to show that you have first-hand experience on the topic. Or if you have experts within your company who have first-hand experience and who have these stories to share about things that have happened to them that have helped them to gain the experience that they have now, and they can share these stories within the content that they create, that's something that Google looks for. Then expertise. Does the author have topical expertise in the area? So that means the knowledge, the qualifications, and the credentials required to give valuable content. So Google will actually look at like your author bio on particular pieces to really see if this person has the expertise to speak about this particular topic. All right. And then authoritativeness, your overall reputation in the industry. And with authoritativeness, it's closely linked to backlinks or off-page SEO. So the amount of backlinks that you have from quality websites signals to Google that you are an authority in the area, because obviously people aren't going to be linking to your website if you're not sharing something valuable and something that people are finding to be worthwhile. So that's one of the things that they look for in authoritativeness. Then T is trustworthiness. So with trustworthiness, you need to be clear about who wrote your content, edit for factual accuracy, cite trustworthy sources, and avoid hiding content behind a wall of ads. So you want to ensure that your content builds trust with your target audience, and you're not just writing a whole heap of fluff or a lot of fluff in your piece, but you're actually bringing value, bringing things that will help people to achieve their best outcomes. So with the EEAT framework, like for example, there's a client that I have now who I've been working with for over a year, and how I create content for that brand, because they don't have internal experts within the company. I interview people within the industry who have the experience, and I use their thoughts and their insights to create podcast episodes, to create create blog posts. So I will use quotes from them in the blog posts. I will repurpose the podcast episodes that I have with them into blog posts, into social media posts, and do all of these things that showcase that, okay, we're actually communicating with experts in the industry, and these are the things that the experts have to say. And based on what these experts have to say, this is how you can implement strategies that will help your business and your brand achieve success. So that's one of the ways that you can showcase the expertise and the experience of your company, even if you don't have experts within your company.
That's a great point. I mean, and I have been thinking about that more and more and more. The whole idea of borrowed authority or authority by association, where you may not have a particular expertise internally. And it's, of course, if you're selling something or you're offering a service, you have to be able to provide that service and do it well. It's the same thing as if you read a book, right? When we read a book, we're reading someone's thoughts. We're reading about someone's experience. But then we adopt that to ourselves and we start to quote that person. So, for example, every brand strategist would know the quote from Martin Neumeyer talking about a brand is a gut feeling. They didn't come up with that. He came up with it, but then they own it as if it's theirs, and then they talk about it and reference it, obviously giving him credit as if it were theirs. And so they build their authority based on his experience and his authority. It's the same strategy that's being used, where internally you might not have this breadth of authority in your industry, but what you're doing, you're bringing in experts who have had the experience, who have built the authority, and you're having conversations with them. And even in that process, you learn. The person who is conducting the interviews, the internal team learns from them, and then they're able to quote, say things, reference, because it's collective experience people have. Not everybody has all the experience, so we are borrowing people's authority. We are calling on their experience in order to validly make this content and share it with our audiences. That's what's some of what's happening.
Right, exactly. You said it perfectly.
Okay, great, excellent. And so I think it's a good idea to do that. And it's a good idea to build out authority in that way. Have you found that talking with these experts gives you an even broader perspective and the ability to create and generate content on your own?
Yes, it really does help with adding fresh perspectives to our discussion, especially in the space where I'm working now, or in the industry that I'm working in now for this particular client. There's not a lot of conversations in the space about how to do what my client does really well. So having these conversations with these experts based on what they've gone through in their own companies or along their own career journeys, it really helps us understand what the real issues are and how the conversation within the space needs to be structured so that people can understand how to do what they do well, if you understand what I'm saying. So it really does help bring in fresh understanding, fresh perspectives that enhance the conversation around particular topics within the niche.
Yeah, that's good. And I think that's a good thing. Nobody has experience and then just keeps it all to themselves. Once you're creating content, that will come out. And you kind of hope that people share the thing that you have come up with or share your experiences. You hope that happens because it becomes the owner of the people who listen to it and who are wanting to find out, how can I do this thing? And they reference you as an expert. So that's a good thing. All right, so let's talk a bit now about the AI tools, because I know one of the things that you have said before is that the AI should be used as a support or tools to enhance certain aspects of the content marketing process. And you referenced it earlier with ChatGPT, but could you tell us some of the other ways that you use AI tools to enhance your content making process?
Sure. Even in some of the tools that we know and love, for instance, Canva, I'm always using Canva to do designs because I am not a designer by any stretch of the imagination. So I use Canva's magic tools at times that are tied to their AI features and stuff. I use those tools to create better designs. So I use them to get template suggestions. I use them to help me to better structure whatever writing I have on the template. So that's one example of a way that I use AI. And a lot of the tools that we love, as I was mentioning earlier, have these little AI features attached to them now that make the content creation process easier. There's also Adobe Podcasts. And although I'm not the editor and full video creator, my husband is, but he uses Adobe Podcasts to clean podcast audio. So he'll put the podcast audio into the tool and it cleans it up and makes it sound like something magical. So I really find that tool very, very helpful. And there are other tools that I haven't really used myself, but I know that there are great tools. There is gi.app. I think gi.app is supposed to be a tool that helps with images. So it helps you to create images that you just put a prompt into the tool and it creates the image for you. I've been seeing a lot of Instagram reels about Adobe adding this AI tool to Photoshop that allows you to just put a prompt in and you can edit photos with ease. So you don't have to go through the tedious process of using Adobe Photoshop's tools to do the editing for you. You can just put the prompts in and it will do the editing for you. It does take a bit of training of the tool to get it right, but I'm sure that over time it will be perfected. And that's one of the things that I find to be useful too. So those are some examples of some AI tools. I mentioned ChatGPT earlier. I use ChatGPT a lot. And with ChatGPT, I use it to create blog post outlines, get topic ideas. I use it to even summarize customer call transcripts, because you can put a call transcript into ChatGPT and ask it to summarize it, pull out the top 3 points from it, and it will actually do it for you. So I find that to be helpful. ChatGPT also can help you to write cold emails, can help you to write email sequences, give you the foundation to start with the email sequences. There's a lot that you can do with ChatGPT, and that's a tool that I use a lot.
Right.
So yeah, those are some examples.
Yeah, because you're primarily a writer, right?
Primarily, yeah.
Primarily, right.
Although I do content marketing overall, but yeah, primarily a writer.
Right. But that's your strength, I guess. Like how video might be my strength. I'm not primarily a writer. I adore writers. Writers are skilled, right?
Thank you.
So
I adore videographers.
So I think okay. So the thing you were referencing earlier. So we know that there are many different places that you could go to get AI generated images. Midjourney, DALL-E, Adobe Firefly was the kind of the one. And then there is Adobe Generative Fill, which is I think what you were referencing earlier on, where you could have an image and you could select just the edges of the image and ask it to fill it out. And that actually, when it first came out, was really great and is even getting better. So that's something that creators of images and is being even used in video now, which is interesting. But the question I want to ask, I know you talked about the ways you can use ChatGPT. What is the wrong way to use ChatGPT?
As I've been mentioning, to support your content marketing process, you don't use it to create a blog article and call it a day. Like you can put a prompt into ChatGPT and say, write a 500-word blog post about this topic and it will do it for you. But you need to add the human element to what you're doing. And you probably need to, not probably, but you do need to tailor your prompts to be very specific. I was looking at a post by Juma. I can't remember pronounce her name properly, but she's one of the leading content strategists in the world. And she was saying that how she uses ChatGPT, she basically puts all of her ideas into the prompt, whatever those ideas are, to formulate the blog post. And once she puts in that very specific prompt about what she wants and the blog post is produced, she then uses that as the foundation to build out an entire expert-filled content piece that brings value. So you use the ChatGPT as a starting point and put in the right prompts and give it very detailed information about what you need. And then you work from there. You don't just use it and say, oh, that's it. That's the end of the day. I'm done. Use it as a starting point.
Yeah, because I saw, like, when it first was launched, well, this is just me being a little mischievous now. When ChatGPT was first launched, there were people on LinkedIn who had not posted in 2 years. They suddenly started to post these long, extensive lists and articles. And I'm like saying, come on, man. I know you, I look back at your posting history. The last thing you posted was a selfie,
a year ago.
A year ago, right? And then now these full articles, like 3 times a week, these full things. And I'm saying to myself, I know. I'm looking at the structure of it. It's just like copy and paste, one prompt, copy and paste. And of course, you could tell because they are not referencing what they did for a client, and they're not referencing personal experiences. They're not referencing anything like testimonials. They're not referencing anything that would personally tie them. Maybe the intro, they might say their name or something like that. but it's not
That's it.
really inside. It's not woven into the content. And you could always tell when it's woven into the content, and you could see how people actually use their experience, their expertise, things that they have done, or things that they've learned and passed through their own thoughts, and now they are putting it back out in the way that they understand, which is also valid. They've done it that way. You could tell the difference between that and someone who just went to any of those large language learning models and just typed in a prompt and got something from it. So it's a massive difference.
It is. But as you mentioned earlier, though, before you go to your next point, this is as bad as AI is going to get right now. So I'm sure over time, over the next couple of years, we're going to see an explosive development in AI. So I think one of the things that we should really do as content marketers and content creators is not shy away from AI completely and not bash it completely, but try to learn how to use it in the best possible way and keep on top of the developments with AI, in other words, and learn how to become a prompt engineer, learn how to do things that will help you to further enhance your content marketing capabilities.
I agree. 100%. I agree with that, because there are valid use cases for AI. It's just people have been using it in the lowest hanging fruit sort of way. And that would happen. If any new technology is released, people will flock to it and they begin to use it in the easiest way possible. But over time, you find that people, they look into what could be done with it, and they start to find innovative ways to use it and ways that are beneficial in much deeper ways. So I agree with you. This is the worst it's going to be. And we should, and I like that whole term, you call it a prompt engineer.
Yeah, it's an actual thing. It's an actual career.
That's interesting. That career didn't exist a couple of years ago.
Exactly.
I find that's amazing. That's so amazing. That's a beautiful way to bring us in for a close, talking about customer-centric content. And it first starts in the customer, obviously. It starts in what their needs, desires, their wants are, the things that can help them. And then, of course, we use the AI tools to enhance those things, enhance the way we communicate and create that content. This has been a really great conversation. Christine, thanks so much for being on today. Could you tell the people where they can find you online?
Sure. Thank you for having me, Juma. And you can find me on LinkedIn at Christine Mclean Lewis. You can also find me on YouTube. You can type in CEM Writing Services and you'll find me on YouTube. Those are the main channels that I use right now. And you can also visit my website, www.cemwritingservices.com.
Excellent. So thank you so much, students, for joining us in the Useful Content Classroom today to learn about customer-centric content and about how AI can be used to enhance that. So we'll see you again in a couple of weeks. Thanks again for coming. Useful Content Classroom, dismissed. And we're clear. I don't know what just happened there.
I just saw you freeze.
My brain just froze for a second, like, what am I going to say next? Oh my goodness. Happens from time to time. Thanks so much, Christine.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
You're most welcome. Let me stop this recording. The Useful Content Podcast is brought to you and produced by Relate Studios. You can see the work we do on our website at relatestudios.com. If you like what you've heard on the podcast today, please follow and come back in 2 weeks for another great episode. And if you want to get more useful content in between that, you can follow me, Juma Bannister, on LinkedIn and on Twitter. We all know it's still Twitter. See you soon in the Useful Content Classroom.